Hello and welcome to the Car Care Nut channel. In today's video, we're going to be talking about the best and worst used Lexus models to buy. Lexus is always ranked very high in their reliability and overall value. But there are some really bad models mixed in between, and there are some that are real highlights. In this video, we're going to be covering them and more. But before we get started, if you're new to the channel, welcome. Consider subscribing to the channel. Check out some of my other videos. If you are a returning subscriber, well, thank you so much for watching another one of my videos. And without further ado, let's get right into it. So Lexus is essentially a glorified Toyota, but in a good way. So let's start with the best Lexus models to buy today. I'm going to break it down into two categories. There is the middle-aged Lexus models, basically those that are over 5 years old, out of warranty, and out in the wild with no warranty. And then we're going to cover the oldies, the ones that are over 10 years old, and you can still purchase them today and potentially drive them another 100,000 miles or more. Let's start with the middle-aged Lexuses. Now, the first one is, and is a highlight to me, the Lexus ES350. Now, when the Lexus made its immigration from 330 to 350, the ES model, it actually changed from being a Camry-based car to an Avalon based. And if you've watched my previous video on best Toyotas to buy, the Avalon is king for reliability, even over all the others. And the ES, being its bigger, fancier, in a suit brother, it is exactly the same. You cannot go wrong today buying any ES350 ever since it became an ES350 from the 3030 all the way to today, like the one behind me. They are really good as long as they are maintained, taken care of, and watched for. And there are a couple problems with these, which we will address generally over the whole Lexus line toward the end of the video. The other model that is highly recommended is the RX 350. Now, let's clarify one thing about the RX 350 because there are a few years that you might want to avoid, actually, and we'll talk why. So, the RX 350 started in 2007. Immigrated again from the RX 330 to the RX 350 when they changed the engine to the 2GR V6 3.5. Well, the first few years, 2007, 2008, 2009, were in the previous generation. 2010 became the new generation and moved on. One thing about the early 3 years of the RX 350, they were notorious for some leaks, mainly the power steering system. It was notorious to leak, it had a few issues, radiator issues, and they're kind of chronic with these. So if you're going to go for an RX 350 today, I would actually look at 2010 and up. The power steering became electric, there's no more pesky leaks from the rack and pinion and all these hoses that are notorious to leak. There were a lot of improvement to the RX 350 that made an already very reliable SUV to even more. It took it to that Lexus level, if you would. Of course, with the RX 350s, they're heavy. Their maintenance is going to be a little bit more than an ES 350. However, it is very well worth it. Tires will be more expensive. Brakes will wear prematurely. But overall, it is an excellent buy today and one that you can buy and easily drive for 100,000 miles as long as you buy a good one, a good example that's been taken care of. Then there is the Lexus IS. A great car. A little bit on the smaller size, a little bit on the uncomfortable size if you are tall and want some space in the car. However, if we are talking about the IS 350, they are wonderful cars to have. Their maintenance and cost will be a little bit higher than, say, the RX and the ES, simply because of their layout. Tires will cost more, brakes are a little bit more expensive, but overall they're very reliable cars if you take care of them. Same thing with the GS. You cannot go wrong buying a GS 350, and emphasis on 350. We'll talk about the rest in a bit. Now, the Lexus GS also has a hybrid variant, a 450h. It is also a wonderful car. However, it wouldn't be my first choice today because they're older hybrids. They were kind of an experimental hybrid and didn't carry on really. So that potentially will not be my top pick, but any IS350 or GS350. You cannot go wrong with both of these as long as they are well maintained and as long as you are in the understanding that these cars will cost you a little bit more in maintenance than their front-wheel drive counterpart. And then there is the trucks, last but not least, the GX and the LX. Folks, let's keep this simple. The GX is a V8 4Runner. That's all it is, with fancy stuff inside, air suspension and all that added stuff, but it's essentially a 4Runner, both from reliability, value, and the overall experience of the truck. The LX, of course, is a Land Cruiser. I mean, I do not need to say more about the Land Cruiser. However, let's talk about these a little bit, and you're going to hear those. This will be our transition to the oldies. The newer ones, they hold their value so high, they're extremely expensive, especially the LX. But if it is something within your budget, you cannot go wrong with these. These are the kind of cars that are basically an investment, almost, I dare say that, for about a car. Because you buy them, you drive them, and then they hold their value so high, it almost feels like you didn't lose much when you come time to sell them. You cannot go wrong with any GX and any LX, regardless if it's old or new. There is one problem with both of these trucks that could turn this best truck into the worst one. More on that when we get to the baddies of the club. Transitioning into the oldies, and I cannot possibly start with the oldies without mentioning the legend, the foundation in which Lexus stands, and it is the Lexus LS. And you notice I didn't talk anything about the LS 460. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Surprise for you a little bit. But we're not even going to talk about the LS 400. Because believe it or not, the LS 400, as of today, the date of filming this video, might not be the best buy in the world. But the only star of the show, really, of the oldies, is the LS 430. I will not say it's an oldie, because this thing is just timeless. It just keeps going and going and going. You buy one today from 2005, 15, 16-year-old car, you can easily put another 100,000 miles with very simple maintenance, and the thing will just keep going. Hence their prices. Their prices are extremely high. They don't really drop because it is the best, possibly one of the best products to ever come out of Toyota Lexus land. It is a wonderful car. It is very nice inside, looks kind of timeless outside, and you cannot go wrong buying one of these. But, of course, the normal stuff applies. Buy a good one, you're going to have a good experience, but be ready because you're going to pay a very high price for it. They really hold their value, and you'll easily notice them the same price as another model in the Lexus Toyota lineup that is 10 years newer. That's just the way it is with the Lexus LS 430. Folks, this is a wonderful car. Only thing about it that I can say is probably it's rear-wheel drive only. So if you live in snow and this kind of weather, like I do in Chicago, it might be a little bit of a challenge, but otherwise, it is a fabulous car that will remain in this kind of king status for as long as I can see. Another oldie that is really, really good is the ES300 and the ES330. Now, the ES lineup really has been really good overall. However, before the 98 year, they're a little too old. We'll cover a little bit on that when we talk about the baddies and things you need to avoid. If you want to play it safe, 2002 all the way to 2006 as we transition into the ES330. I mean, these things, again, they are probably second in the oldies after the LS 430. They just keep going and going and going. You buy one today, you'll put another 100,000 miles on it, and all you're doing is just basic maintenance, maybe a little oil leak here and there, simple stuff, very DIY friendly. I mean, this is a very nice car to drive, to be in. It's a nice place to sit in, and it is very reliable, extremely comparable to a 2004 to 2006 Camry XLE V6. It is basically a trim after the XLE V6, and it is a very, very good car to own today. And to mention the trucks one more time, and I'll say the highlight of the trucks. An LX, which is the 100 series Land Cruiser, basically, they are phenomenal. I mean, the things hold their value like you would not believe. As of today, filming this video, now we're in the crazy market of used cars. They're in the 20,000s, at least in my area. That is crazy for a almost 20-year-old truck. And then equally, the GX 470, the LX 470 and the GX 470 have one of the best engines Toyota/Lexus ever made. Hands down, there has not been an engine that come close to how good that 2UZ FE 4.7 liter V8 is. And speaking of the oldies, and I told you we'll talk about this in a little bit. Problems. Let's talk about when things go south with Lexus and the things you really should stay away from. Now the rainbows and butterflies are gone. Let's talk about the Lexus models that you should absolutely avoid and should never buy, and they were just disasters. Starting with the top disaster that possibly Toyota Lexus ever had. It is just a giant mistake. The Lexus IS. Remember, we just said it was one of the best cars to buy, except I emphasized on the IS 350. I said emphasis on this because if you buy an IS 250, you will have the exact same car that everything else was reliable except the disaster under the hood. That was the time where direct injection was starting to make its way through the automotive business, ruining one bank account at a time. So Lexus wanted to kind of experiment with it. Toyota didn't want to, and they never did until they found a permanent solution for it. But Lexus said, let's try it, let's see what happens. So they took an extremely reliable engine, the GR generation engine, which is a fabulous engine otherwise, and they decided to take the port injection, put direct injection in it only. It was called the D4 drain your bank 4 times over disaster. That's what that was. I'm sorry, Lexus makes great cars. Toyota is a great company, but they dropped the ball on that one. They made that engine direct injection only. It was very loud. That was the first thing you'll notice about it. It's like, why is this thing so loud? It sounds like a diesel. But that's okay, you know. Newer engines now sound like that too. But that engine had so many problems because of this simple transition. If it's not burning oil, it is carboning up and misfires, and it's just kind of a snowball effect. But the biggest problem is, okay, so they messed up, let's fix it. Well, you can't. You clean the carbon, and hopefully you don't have oil consumption, and drive it, year 2, 3, it's back. Because direct injected cars, that's just the way the cookie crumbles with direct injection cars. The valves will carbon up. There's no way around it. It's just a matter of when, not if. So, folks, for my international viewers, there is a GS 250 that has the same disaster engine and a few other models. I'll leave the name of that engine. It's a 4GR FSE. That's the name of the engine. Avoid that engine in all years that Toyota made it because it's direct injection. And even though some will tell you, oh, the later years were improved, they're not. It's the same thing over and over and over. Avoid any IS 250 or, for our international viewers, GS 250. Skip them, buy the 350, you're going to thank me later. And to give everybody else peace of mind, in case you open the hood and you see D4S, big difference because Toyota fixed this by moving away from direct injection only, and now they have dual injection. They have direct and port. That effectively fixes the problem with the carboning of the valves, and life is great. Now these engines can go 200,000-300,000 miles without any issues of carboning. Then there is the other one that I would like you to avoid, please. The HS250. You know, there is something with cars that when all of a sudden you have a blip model, that's what I'm going to call it. It's basically an ES, but it's not, because they wanted to experiment with having a line of hybrids. Now, the HS was basically right at the transition point where the ES was no longer based off the Camry, it was based off the Avalon, but the HS was actually based off the Camry. So it is a car that didn't know what it wants to do. Very strange car, if you've ever been in one. They're very strange looking, very strange interior. Everything just looks out of place and wrong. But that's okay. There is a market for them. There are people that like them. But the problem is the engine. See, Lexus did not really have a lot of four-cylinder models. That was one of the kind of the first or mainstream or modern times. And then they put the worst engine possible in that car, and it's inherited from the 2007 to 2011 Toyota Camry Hybrid, the 2.4 liter 2AZ FE engine. And there's not a lot of press on the Lexus side on it, but if you Google that engine with the words oil consumption or oil burning, you'll know what I'm on about. That engine had a catastrophic problem where it burned oil, and Toyota, on the Toyota side, and even on the Lexus side, they did come up with a campaign, hey, bring these cars in with a certain period of time, we're trying to make you all happy. Let's fix these cars, and the fix was permanent and it worked and great. But so many HS250s, and they're 250s with a 2.4 liter engine. So technically a HS240, but 240 didn't pass through in the marketing department, so 250 did not really do well. It burned oil, they covered some of them, but not the rest. And then they just flat discontinued the whole model and goodbye, we're done. Let's just make an ES hybrid, which makes a lot more sense and didn't have this whole mess. So folks, you notice Lexus starts a model and keeps going with it for a long time. They don't exactly just cut a model and it just disappears completely. That one is, and please avoid it because you'll find them at some pretty interesting prices, and you look at them, they look nice with all the leather seats and all that mess. They're not worth it. Just move away, go buy a regular ES or a later ES hybrid. Now, I kept referring in the video about one problem that could plague any Lexus, and that problem is rust, especially in the trucks, the LX and the GX. Folks, if you are buying one of these trucks and you see it and it's extremely rusty, walk away. It's not worth it, because that king of reliability truck could turn into a giant nightmare in a very short period of time if the previous owner was not on top of the rust proofing, taking care of it, washing it regularly, especially the early LXs, LX470, fabulous car. But the problem is they start falling apart because of rust. The first thing that'll happen is the front sway bar flats snap off the frame from rust. Well, there are kits to weld in, repair that, fine. But then the stage 2 of that disaster is when the frame starts rotting. Okay, well, we can weld reinforcements and life is good. Okay, we can get past that. But then stage 3, where things just kind of fall off, is when you get rock chips around the windshield, and then that area corrodes, and then it pushes the windshield just a little bit up, enough for water to come in, corrode everything in the body computer, and now you have these nightmares of electrical problems there, that on top of the rust that you have to fix and the frame and the front sway bar leg that broke off, now you have all kinds of electrical gremlins. You'll feel like you're driving a German car from the 90s. It just doesn't make sense. Folks, if you're buying one of these, look at the frame. Don't even sit in the car. Don't even drive it. You look at the frame first. Then if the frame is good, you're going to look around the front windshield, especially in the top area. If you see any rock chips or any bubbling or any corrosion, walk away. It's not worth it. Otherwise, this could be a determining factor between the LX470 being one of the best buys ever or the worst ones ever. Rust, folks, and this goes across the entire lineup. Especially in the oldies, when you get one that is severely rusted, walk away. When we get into the 90s were times where Toyota Lexus products did not do well with rust at all. I cannot tell you how many ES300s, like 95, 96, I get in the shop. Every once in a while we get one, put the lift underneath it, lift it, the lift just goes right through the body. Please be careful when you're buying these, especially in the rust belt. I am from Chicago, and this is very common here. And worse, if you're from a non-rust area and you're buying one from here because it's very cheap and it's a good deal, be very careful with these, because this could turn a good purchase into a disaster real quick. And last but not least on the baddies list, the LS460. And everybody's going to jump right now, like, whoa, what do you mean? This is like rated the top of the top. Well, here's the problem. It is actually a very good sedan, a beautiful sedan. It has a lot of features. I mean, it is the flagship of the flagship. So The problem with the LS460, and specifically in the early years, 2007, 2008, up to 2010, 11, right around those years, you look at them today, they're actually within reach of a lot of people. I know the crazy car market is probably up a little bit more, but normally they're the same price as a 5-year-old Camry. And once you drive one, it's like, wow, I can buy this for the price of a 5-6-year-old Camry. But the first question you need to ask yourself is, why is that? There's a very good reason for that. They're fabulous cars, but as they get older and as complicated as they are, things are going to need fixing. And that's okay, that's normal. But the problem with the LS is, here is a almost 6-figure car that you're buying for $10,000, $15,000. The repair bill will be that of an almost 6-figure car, not going to be that of a $10,000, $15,000 car. Different story with the Camry. That's the same price. When it was new, it was $25,000, $27,000, and the repair bills will reflect that. Example for the LS460: you buy it, runs great. All of a sudden, noise from the back over bumps. Well, it has air suspension. The rear shocks go. The rear shocks are ridiculous. You're talking, for replacing one shock, you could replace a whole set and more for an ES300 or an ES350. And then, okay, well, maybe the shocks have been replaced, life is good, the air shocks, maybe you don't have that problem. You're just about going on regular maintenance, tires and brakes. Tires, they're expensive, okay, they're big tires. Tires on cars are getting bigger and more expensive these days, so that's okay. But the brakes are a small fortune. Sure, you can go aftermarket, but then they pulsate and they don't stop well. And then now you're just buying a premium car and putting cheapo parts on it to save money. Why are you doing this to yourself? On top of it, taking premium fuel, and it's not exactly great on gas. And you're just creating a hurdle for buying a car that is comfortable but is no longer comfortable. Please don't do this to yourself. Understand what you're buying when you go buy an LS460. People buy it left and right and they get burned on them because all of a sudden you have the tiniest little problem and it's $3,000 to fix it. Whoa, what do you mean it's $3,000 for this? Yeah, parts are expensive. This is a near 6-figure car. Be very careful with these. And when you find one for a steal, the steal is going to happen to you, not the deal that you're paying for this car. So be careful with these, please. And folks, I will say one thing about buying a Lexus. We've talked about this in a previous video. Lexus is a glorified Toyota in a good way. You go look at the Toyota lineup. You like them, but you want something a little bit more upscale for the same reliability. The only reason you should be buying a Lexus is because they are reliable and nice. They are not at the level, the way German cars thrive with their exhilarating drive and thrill. They are not that. But they do one thing very well. They are extremely reliable and upscale. The earlier models felt very close to Toyotas, but lately, let's say beginning of 2010s and up, they kind of spread where they're completely different than Toyota. They always have new stuff. You always see the newest innovations in the Lexus side first and then Toyota. So as long as you avoid the few that they have, you cannot go wrong buying a Lexus. They hold their values very well. If you take care of them, they'll take care of you. Now that applies to every car, but it's specifically Toyota and Lexus. If you want to get that 200,000 miles on the car and you look back and you're like, I didn't do anything, just maintenance. You got to take care of the maintenance. I hope this video was helpful and informative. I hope you learned something new. If you like this video, consider giving it a thumbs up. If you're not a subscriber, consider subscribing to the channel. Check out some of my other videos. Until the next video, folks, may the Lord bless you and keep you, and you have yourself a wonderful day.